Welcome back to the Building HVAC Science podcast. It's our goal here with this podcast to help create better, more knowledgeable HVAC and building performance technicians by helping the two professions better understand each other. This podcast aims to make customers happy in the homes and buildings they live and work in. Those are your customers. And having education, background, knowledge, resources is critically important. Today's episode, that is Eric Kaiser and I speak with Craig Migliaccio. Some of his students used to call him Mr. Mig. Why don't you try that on for size if you have trouble with his last name. He's the creator of AC Service Tech, which puts him in the place of being an author, an educator, and really an industry influencer. Craig shares his background with us and describes how over 60,000 copies of his first book were sold. He just seems to have this gift for creating content. He discusses actually some of the backstory, some things you wouldn't realize about the challenges and rewards of creating technical books. He has a team-driven approach to his business. It's actually a business. It's not a hobby. It's what he does for a living. And he has a dedication to quality that you would see evident in his books. I think that's why they're so popular. His YouTube channel has over 500,000 subscribers. He also talks about the importance of work-life balance, family and faith, and encourages listeners to prioritize their well-being alongside their professional goals. Got a few links in the show notes. I think this will be a fun episode for you to listen to get insights into the mind of a creator like Craig Migliaccio. So, enough of this. Let's hear some of that.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Building HVAC Science podcast. Eric Kaiser here. Bill Spohn right over there. And our special guest on this episode, Mr. Craig Migliaccio of AC Service Tech. He writes books. He does training videos. He has a podcast of his own, I believe. He spends a lot of time doing a lot of stuff to help the industry out. Welcome, Craig.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate you, Eric. Appreciate you, Bill. And thank you for what you guys are doing. I love seeing you out at the events when I get to see you and just talking to you in general. You guys both care a lot about the industry and want to invest in it. So I appreciate you.
Yeah. And speaking of care and investing in the industry, what in the heck got you interested in writing your own books? You got to really care about something to write your own book. You could have done something else with your time, right?
Yeah. So I was teaching in the high school, teaching career technical education students. I was teaching them HVAC, and I looked through all of the books that were out there, and I don't want to name names or anything like that. And I was just perusing through them, and I'm trying to pull out procedures that I could use as like a backbone for me to help teach my students in the classroom. Because that's how they're performing work to make money. And so everything is really theory. And I felt like things purposely maybe even went around procedure, maybe because it was safer, maybe because they don't have to edit as much like every year or whatever, whenever they update the books. And so I wanted to put something together that was like in a sequential, organized manner to go over everything that has to do with working with refrigerants, like in HVAC. And so I also landed on air conditioning because air conditioning has a lot of definites in it. Whereas like when you're working on a heat pump, it's more, you're around this temperature, you're around here, you're around that. It's a little difficult to be able to, number one, set the charge in heating mode, but air conditioning, there's a lot of definites for me to just put them down and really get it organized for my students. And so I was making the videos at that time on YouTube, and I wanted to have something there to also help support the business and just encapsulate all the information.
So you filled a gap that you saw.
Absolutely.
And when was that? How many years ago, or the year first?
When I first saw the gap was 13 years ago.
And then when did the first book come out, first edition?
I started writing the first edition about maybe 9 or 10 years ago. And that first edition took 3 years to build because I didn't write books. I'm a technician and a in-person teacher. That wasn't even up my alley. It's just I cared so much about the students and people getting the information that it's like this was in my way. So let's get it out of the way and do it. Yeah, long time in the making.
And so a few other people decided it was something reasonable. You probably, sold a few dozen copies by now?
Of the first book?
Yeah.
So the Refrigerant Charging is Service Procedures for Air Conditioning book, first edition. You want to know how many we sold of that?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
So we sold 60,000 copies of the first edition since 2019 when it first came out. And then now it's been adopted by a lot of schools, unions, contractors, and individual technicians that are just out there trying to learn on their own, maintenance technicians wanting to break into the industry, homeowners that want to get certified. We get a lot of nice emails back about the videos and about the book, and it really helped them grow or just rise within their company really quick. And that's an awesome thing. And in fact, you're the one that encouraged me to put that up in our office, write some of these things down that people mentioned, because it's an encouragement, because it's a disconnect. When you're pushing this hard, you're not out in front of people as much as you want to be. And so you don't have that disconnect. So at least if you know how much this stuff means to people, you'll keep pushing hard in it.
Very good. Right now, I think you mentioned, have you changed a little bit the way you go about doing this? The last book, you were telling me more about like a team effort. Like you've really started to make this more robust.
Yeah, the first book, it took me 3 years to make it, and I worked with 2 graphic designers, one that I already worked with at the school, and then another offsite illustrator. And then I also worked with a retired teacher. And he helped me really make sure that the words that I was writing was what I meant to say. And that just the review and editing process of the words took a year of that 3 years, the initial book that we wrote. And that first book was 229 pages. And so we've left that out there since 2019, and now it's time to update it for several things, like the new refrigerants, A2L refrigerants, moving away from manifold gauge sets into probe use and other things like that, but not forgetting that a lot of people still use manifolds. So we're doing procedures in both manners. We're giving different scenarios based on whether they're using manifold gauge sets, digital manifold gauge sets, the all-in-one sets that are calculating superheat subcooling, probe use, gauge stub, and wireless temperature clamps with digital displays on them. Like we have like everything. So everybody is covered, but not in a way where I feel like it's overwhelming, because that was a big thing to me too. I didn't want to overwhelm people, but we have double the amount of images as the first one. So anyway, getting back to the team effort, we did that first book, which was the refrigerant charting service procedures for air conditioning, and we had it listed on our website and on Amazon, and then we've branched out. TrueTech Tools carries our books, which is awesome. Thank you. So in 2023, January 2023, we published the mini split book. So it's an inverter mini split operation to service procedures, and that's all about inverter heat pumps. And so basically, since the first book, we had developed a team. So our business had grown from the revenue, basically from our first book and the workbook, and we developed quick reference cards. We made posters, which even the posters are really cool. We have 7 packs of posters, and what's cool about that is we have 4,007 packs of posters hung mainly across in the United States in different places. That's how many of our 7 packs of posters are out there. I say that to say it's like an awesome, I don't know, it feels really cool to be able to put something out that people are looking at and new technicians are looking at, and the owners of the companies or teachers are pointing to these things that I didn't have when I was teaching. All of this stuff that we've been putting out is iterations of things that I was teaching in the classroom or things that were missing when I was teaching in the classroom, like the refrigeration cycle pictures and everything. Anyway, so as we've gone and we made the mini split book, we started developing a team here. And so we bought a shop. We're located at a shop right 6 minutes down the road from where I live at. We have a full distribution team, 3 people in the distribution team. And then we have our social media coordinator. We have our graphic designer. We've got myself. And so we also have a managing editor that's helping me with just the layout of the books. So it's definitely a team effort. And since the mini split book, we've made a couple adjustments to our team. And this last book took 1 year. So the original book took 3 years. Mini split book took 2 years. And this rewrite of the first book took 1 full year. It does take about a year to 2 years, probably 2 years to write a full book if you're starting from scratch with no images, and to have it like be good to the point of where I feel comfortable with releasing it.
So are you like the only person doing this kind of thing? That's the only person I know of writing your own book. There's not a lot of people that take this path.
So the people that put books out are usually larger companies with committees and all kinds of stuff. The way I thought about it was the first book, nobody was ever going to allow me to publish a book. Nobody was going to accept it. I'd be like, please, sir, please publish my book. No, they're like, no, who are you? We don't care. It's the same thing with the videos. In 2016 is when I started making the YouTube videos, and you have to test what would be like, what I don't want to call it the market, but see if anybody cares. So I started putting videos out, and I was putting them out because they would be like substitute lessons for my students at the school where I taught at. And just to see what would happen when I started putting them out. And during that summer, they started taking off, and there was a lot of comments that came in that people really appreciated it. So I was like, okay, well, I can continue doing that. Kept doing it, and you have like a little bit of, say, income come in from YouTube advertising, but not a whole lot. And I was always real particular with trying to do any sponsorships or anything like that would like help me build my team. Because you have to have some type of income in order to have a team to be able to help make the product good or make the educational content good. And you can't do it yourself. There's just no way. So you need people. You need to be able to share the encouragement with everybody else, like how much of a difference this means, and see if they're willing to come on board with you. And we have a great team right now. Of course, hey, could we build it out more and do more things? Yeah, of course. But I really appreciate everybody here. They're awesome.
Eric, in our pre-conversation, you were interested in this connection between theory and practice. You want to explore that a little?
Yeah. There's something you mentioned, Craig, as we were talking before the show, where you really looked at this and you dove into bringing out the practices rather than just talking about theory. You want to talk about why you do something and how you get it done. What drove you to that? Why would you do something like that? It's different, I guess, and I see it's different than everything else out there in the industry, really.
So presently, or even back when, you only have things in an organized manner in theory, and it's like it doesn't apply to the technicians. I talk in the manner that I talk because that's the whatever IQ level or whatever that I'm at. But then I want to delve in hard into a subject if I think it's going to help people. So literally, when I was teaching at the school, all of the books were only theory. So what am I supposed to teach? Is there standards? No, I will let you on at a big secret. Across the entire United States, there's no standards. You can teach whatever you want in every single technical school across the country. Do whatever you want. Honestly, there's not that much there. So yes, there's curriculum standards. Yes, I've written my own curriculum, but the reality of it is in the day-to-day, they don't necessarily have something to follow. And so for a new teacher that's the first 3 years in, they're developing it all from scratch based on what they think is valuable to the student in the classroom. So those are the things that I wanted to put in a book. So that's never been in a book. So it's okay, put the step-by-step procedures in a book. Literally the entire connection process from which little thing you connect to the removing the air from the hoses or the recovery procedure, like how you're going to connect and at least it gives somebody a starting point. You don't have to follow the same way that I do procedures. It gives them a starting point. They can move off from there. At least it gives them something. So a teacher that's been in the field for 5 years, they're going to have their own way and they're fine. As long as you care about students, you're going to be able to teach them the things that are going to make students valuable. So that's what I wanted to put in the book, things that I knew were going to make them valuable. So troubleshooting procedures, indicators, everything has to be applicable. Otherwise, it's not worth teaching. I don't care. It's not worth teaching because you only have a limited amount of time with somebody. You need to keep their attention. There is a thing with teaching where you could be completely correct, and that's great. It doesn't matter because none of that correct information just made it into the brain, and none of it has been applicable to the person that was listening to it or taking it in. So we have to be able to, at least I learn, and a lot of people learn by doing. And so at least if they could replicate what I'm telling them to do in a step-by-step manner, then they'll learn and they could always adjust from there and move off. And that's all I really care about is that there's a lot of good teachers out there like Ty Braneman. He's fantastic. And also, by the way, he reviewed the book and gave me some editing notes for the book. And so his opinion really matters because he connects with people. So you have to write in a way that you connect with people. You have to write where it's a low barrier for entry. If you write it in a complicated manner, it's not going to be downloaded into somebody's brain as easily, even to the point of like mathematical calculations. How you write your mathematical calculations out, you could lose somebody in the middle of it. We're correct, but I'm like, that's not good enough. We have to simplify it more. So it's easily, even in a text, how you'd write it, like something, subtract number X from C. I don't like to write that way. I will just write the number minus this number because it's just so easy, so quick. And the less brain activity you need to be able to like absorb it and move on, the better, because this is a complicated subject matter.
I'll say I think that helps people learning a lot. I've been asking this question a lot here recently of people that we've had on, and I see a lot of things, just like you're saying, a lot of theoretical stuff being thrown around. But then how do we get that into practice? How do we take that from the theoretical into the practical? And I love that you've done that with this book and all your books. That really speaks to me about that. As you've gone through this, you've watched people step through. It sounds like they're having great success with that after reading the book, putting those into practice. Do you think you're ever going to go farther than this?
I could go a bunch of different ways with this answer. Do you mean write more books, build the company out more to be able to educate in a better manner? What exactly, I guess, is the question?
You think you're going to go into more topics and more subjects beyond what you've already hit?
I would like to. In fact, that's the thought process right now is we need to get through the workbook for this because we're already having people ask for the workbook and the Spanish version. So we were very picky with picking out our Spanish translator for our books, and she's doing a fantastic job and has been, from what we could tell, very, very accurate so that there's the least amount of confusion possible. So people are asking for the workbook, the Spanish book, and then a Spanish workbook for this new edition. So we need to get that done first. And so we just got all the books in and we're in stock on our website and we're getting Amazon up. There's a lot of the behind the scenes things that need to happen to keep things operating and also quality control. We work with a local print shop in order to make sure the quality is really good. Even it comes down to the paper and the colors. You wouldn't even imagine. It's crazy. But anyway, with all that being said, I'm starting to think about what the next project's going to be. So I haven't landed on that yet. But I definitely have some thoughts in my mind. And I've asked people, what do you want to see next? And so I'm trying to figure that out right now. So yeah, it's a big deal too, because it's a big commitment for our company. Everybody is coming with me and we are driving this thing home because that's how much energy it takes in order to accomplish something like a book or a course or whatever it is. It just takes a lot, at least in my view. Otherwise, what's the point? Because a lot of things like courses or whatever, if you're just touching on a subject, I don't see that having much value. So I don't know, when you just touch little tiny nuggets. But at the same time, I've also been encouraged, you don't have to always put out something big. You can put out a small little social media post with just a nugget of information for somebody to just quickly grab and apply. That's okay. That's good. I don't know. I think there's a lot of value with putting something together in a holistic manner and in a large manner, but it takes so much energy.
It's not like you can just jump out of bed in the morning and say, hey, we're going to go do this for the next 2 years or 3 years.
Right. It's a big deal. And it's not easy for me either. It's very hard.
Well, as a small business, that's never easy to make a commitment like that. There's a lot of thought and forethought that has to go into that because if things can change a lot in that time period too. So if you start down a road and all of a sudden the industry shifts, you never know what happens there.
You were on the podcast before, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes. It was episode 74 back in May of 22. In that episode, you explained your backstory, but I thought maybe you could give us a quick recap of that to help people better understand why you do things the way you do.
I come from a family of carpenters, and then I did HVAC out of high school. I just did 1 year of college, and I decided I wanted hands-on. I got into the trade. I worked for a company for 3 years, basically. It was not even 3 years. I had one company I worked for 3 months, and I decided this wasn't the right company for me due to how they communicated. It was a mess. It was a little bit of a mess. Anyway, so the next company I worked for almost 3 years, that owner really treated me really well, and he even went for NATE certifications and things like that my first year. And I got the service and install for heat pumps that first year to be able to apply for the South Jersey gas rebates and everything. But anyway, so we did that. He sold the company. I started my own business at that time. And I went out my own doing half carpentry, half HVAC. I became a Bryant dealer in Cape May County, New Jersey. And then I did that for maybe 4 years until I had my first baby. So I was concerned about health insurance. And that's a big, I don't want to say a joke, but it's a big fallacy with people that don't have their own business. It's oh yeah, this job comes with insurance. Well, not really. They have insurance, but you have to pay into it and it's always expensive and the things. And it's very interesting how the whole insurance thing works out. But anyway, I worked for a school about 45 minutes away for 2 years as their maintenance and construction, what do you want to call it, advisor or whatever. So I would do quotes for the solar panels. We put $1 million solar system up on the roof and then build a home ec room in there. And I also would have some students shadow me. There was a job shadow program at that school. And so I really liked that. At the time, I was working with youth group kids at our local church. I liked investing in kids. I decided I wanted to try to get into teaching. And I started basically teaching night school at our local county technical high school. I taught building maintenance there. At the same time, I found out that the HVAC daytime position was maybe going to open up. And so I wanted to get my ducks in a row, get certifications and things like that to allow me to be able to teach. There's what's called the alternate route program in New Jersey, which allows somebody that has pre-existing knowledge to be able to basically get hired and teach at a school, even if you don't have, say, a associate's or bachelor's degree. Anyway, the state of New Jersey at that point in time, whoever I was talking to, didn't want to accept my work experience over like the last 8 years of, at that point, owning my own business, because I kept my business the whole time. I kept doing heating and cooling the whole time, even when I was working at this school. So they thought that basically when you own your own business, you work 20 hours a week. And I was like, well, no, a lot of these years were 60 and 80 hours a week. Anyway, the long and short of it was they weren't willing to accept it. So I had to go back to school. Now, this is one of those things in my life where I said, this thing is in my way. So we just want to get through it and knock it out. So if they weren't willing to accept my self-employment experience, and by the way, I really pushed hard. I was like, I had my accountant verify all of my invoices and break it down into hours, which is what it said in the statement. In the state of New Jersey's like form right there. And then they also said, if you have a problem with that, you can hire an attorney to review your accountant's information. I did that too. And they still rejected it. So they said, well, why don't you use your 2 years of working for somebody else? And all he had to do with that company was sign a 1-page document for that 2 years of experience. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. You'll just take that? So they'll take that along with 2 years of an associate's degree program. So I enrolled in Thomas Edison State College online. And then ended up getting 42 college credits in it took 4 months, but it was actually 3 months of actually doing it, writing prior learning assessments, taking tests and stuff like that. I actually had to take one class in order to get a grade, but I had to just pump it out, just get it done. So every Saturday I was writing like a 13 to 16 page paper, didn't know how to write, to get 3 college credits every Saturday. Boom, boom. And I had a doctorate review what I was writing. And I was writing about heating and cooling. So anyway, all that to say, I finally got my state certificate of eligibility to teach HVAC, sheet metal, and also building maintenance by that time after getting those things. So then the position opened up at school. I got hired because I had a mentor at the school that was saying basically, even if they want to hire somebody else, they can't if you have the certifications. So you put in the work ahead of time to get the certifications or licenses. I said, okay, I'll do that. And so it's a matter of how much you want things in life. So it's like, if this thing's in your way, you just go through it. Or somebody says no, it's like, well, that's not good enough. You're not going to tell me no. We're just going to push it because this is the desire that I have in my heart. And it's about other people too, because I want to invest in people. Because when I looked at the job sites that I had, when I owned my own business, it was just basically at the end of the day, I had the job that I did, which I took pride in. My relationship with people within the company, keep people at the supply house, the homeowners, but I wanted more. I want to teach people. I always liked teaching my helpers, the apprentices that would come with me, and then they would go branch off on their own. I really liked that. All this stuff, as you could tell in my life, is just like quick time periods, but it was always a matter of putting a lot of time in those time periods, a lot of hours. So I started teaching at the school. And after 3 years of teaching during the school, I was doing like testing at night, by the way, because the first year I came in, I was like, oh, I never went to a technical school. So I have to learn how to teach. And so I started doing experiments at nights, like basically after school let out, I'm running experiments. So to try to make sure that what I was actually teaching was actually what was said and not just something that was passed on to me. A lot of times, just as people, humans, we tend to repeat things that were said to us as if they are facts. And you got to watch that because that's inaccurate and you have somebody's life at stake or for safety, or you're just teaching them an incorrect process. And I did teach some processes that were like pulling a vacuum through a manifold. Like when I started out, like this dumb stuff. I didn't know. So you have to learn, dive in. And so after those experiments and testing, basically after 3 years, I got a lot of the forms down and the papers down and the things that basically were going to start making up the book. Procedures, I had some of those things down that I really wanted to get out to more people than just the people that I had in my classroom, which I cared about deeply. So I was teaching daytime, nighttime, started making YouTube videos, and I was also running my business, and I was not working at the church, but doing the youth group at the church. So basically started making videos, made videos for 3 years. During that time, like the last 2 years I was at the school, so I was at the school for 6 years total. The last 2 years I was writing that book, the first book, the Refrigerant Charging and Service Procedures book. And so at that point, after 6 years at the school, I was making a lot of videos, answering every single comment that came in on YouTube, doing change outs at nights and the weekends. I had 2 kids at that time. I was coaching my son's wrestling team and writing a book and all of those things, teaching during the daytime, teaching 2 nights a week for the adults at night. And I got mono and I had to bow out of the school because I couldn't think past 11:30 a.m. At different times of my life, I've ended up like running out of energy. Like where you're like in a corner, you have absolutely no energy left and you're just trying to recoup to just push harder. But your body doesn't work that way and your mind doesn't work that way, apparently.
I can't imagine why with all of that list. My next question was going to be, when did you find time to sleep?
I think that's part of the problem with the mono and stuff like that is like the lack of sleep over and over and over a long period of time catches up with you and then your body doesn't like work properly anymore. So that year, basically, I left the school, I put in my resignation and I was pursuing making videos and I had my basically construction and HVAC company if I needed to quote unquote fall back on fully if I needed to. My wife, man, she supported me. She initially was like, no, why would you leave a school that has guaranteed income, health insurance, and everything, and you like investing in people? Like, why would you leave that to make YouTube videos? Even my accountant was like, no, you're not doing that. I'm like, number one, I can't even do what I'm doing right now. Like, I have to heal, and I got to finish this book and make these videos, and then I can do the construction. And my wife went to sleep. She woke up and she had this epiphany. She was like, trust the man, don't trust the circumstances. And she said, when has this man ever let you down? If he said something, did he always do it? That is exactly what she said. And it's such a huge thing to me because she believed in me and she was willing to go with me. And that's what allowed us to be able to make the first book, build a team, continue to be able to invest in all these people in our country and in Canada and things like that with this training. The shame of it is I just don't get to see them face to face. That's the only shame of it.
But you do get out there to a few different events. And unfortunately, this podcast will air after the early spring events in 2025. But which ones do you usually do or getting out to do?
So the guaranteed ones that we typically are doing are AHR and the HVACR Symposium. We've gone out to the HVAC Excellent events in the past. I've tried to limit my travel down because if I'm out there traveling, we're not building. It literally is, I just fall behind as we're out there. Like, even if I'm not doing a project, I just fall behind because I'm the one necessarily running the business here. And I'm also the main technical person here or the only technical person here. And everybody else has their skill sets that they're handling. Like, I don't handle anything that has to do with the distribution of our books digitally in paper form or anything like that. That's Patricia's whole side over there. So she handles that. But on the side where we're educating, even with social media posts and things like that, that I always have a review of those things before they go out, or making the YouTube videos. It is very difficult to try to focus on one project when you are making a social media post almost every day. We're making our long form YouTube videos every other week now. So it used to be once a week. Now it has to be every other week because it's just too much, because it mentally drains me. It takes a long time to make any type of YouTube video. It may not be like that for everybody, but it is for me, to make sure that all of the words are right, all the things that I'm teaching are right, and it's applicable and usable.
How long would you say it takes you to put together a video and get it to your standards?
A regular YouTube video would be 16 to... So like total hours of everybody involved would be like maybe 16 hours to maybe 40 hours.
Wow.
And then we're talking about a 5 or 10 minute video.
Yeah. It's a lot of work that goes in behind the scenes.
Yeah. Those are like, people are accessing them for free. There's really not much of any income. It's not like our income is increasing from YouTube or anything like that. There's nothing like that at all. And so I might throw, hey, and check out our book if you want to learn more or whatever. But you have to just put this stuff out there because you know it's helping people.
Yeah, and obviously the YouTube, there's a few subscribers. I don't know if you checked the number lately, 547,000.
Ooh, he's over 500,000. Congratulations.
Yeah. And what's really cool about YouTube is it doesn't matter how many you have, though. People, if a video is good, they'll push it. So if you are a good teacher and you want to start educating people and it resonates because people are watching for a long period of time or watching a high percentage of the time, Like they're clicking on it and they're watching it for a long period of time. YouTube's going to push it out to everybody. So like when I started, it was very hard to break in and to like actually get some traction because that's not how YouTube worked back then. So like they operate on crazy amount of algorithms, their AI and everything like that. So
yeah, I hope people really appreciate what you've done here. Between the videos, 600 and something videos, 648 videos. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And how many books in total? In
the first edition of the book, the second edition of this book, which is the refrigerant charting and service procedures for air conditioning, which includes all the new refrigerants and the mini split book, and then the posters and then quick reference cards. So we've also sold PowerPoints and stuff like that to allow new teachers to come in just to have something, because that's until they develop their own things. So still trying to figure out what our next project is, but we still have to get through whatever you want to call it, the meat grinder of we've got to get through these presentations that we're putting together, that we're going out to these expos. It actually takes a bit for me to even prepare to go out and teach. And then we're going to have a booth at the HVACR symposium. So we're going to have some teaching displays there because I don't want to stand there with just books. I want there to be something to apply. I finally get to see somebody face to face. So this let me teach. Can I just teach with some stuff?
So you're going to teach with things you would have in your lab if you were teaching?
Not as big, no, because it takes more tools and stuff. So little assemblies that maybe don't exist outside of anywhere else. We're going to have our little electrical training board there it replicates a gas furnace and air conditioner. It uses like a sequencer. So the first light bulb lights up for heat, and then the sequence is powered, and then the fan turns on, and then the heat mode turns off. So the red light bulb turns off, the fan keeps running for another 30 seconds or so. Like those type of projects, as well as like mini split projects and the EEV projects and things like that.
Perfect. That's a lot of work. I still want to know when you find time to sleep.
If I lose all those stuff, like in shipment, that would be a sad day. I'm like, please insure that for a lot of money, please. So it's really important for me. It's like balance is very important. If you can't have balance, it's not good. So it's definitely a wrestling thing because I spend a lot of time with my son doing hunting or outdoor activities and things like that, or we try to go away and do things. But I'm usually working. What happens is if we go on a road trip, a lot of times my wife is willing to drive and I am there working on things. We'll be in a car ride. I might have conversations and stuff like that. But if you are mainly focused, because kids are like watching a movie or they're reading a book or they're doing something, like I'm not having a conversation with them. So I'm not really losing anything there. And so when I'm trapped in a car, I end up getting hyper-focused. So it's like, as I can't do anything else. I said all of this stuff is super hard because it's like you want to always go to the next shiny thing, the thing that piques your interest. You want to be able to move on. But a lot of times you can't because you're not 100% done yet. Or if you leave it like this, you still have some incorrectness or a lack of connection with the person that's reading, watching the video, or trying to apply the thing. So you have to press in as hard as you can to make sure that it's all good.
Speaking of connection, your email address or for your books or for your business is questions@AC Service Tech. What's one or two of your most interesting questions?
Interesting questions.
Are they all pretty run of the mill? I mean, like about the book, about the process?
About the book, a lot of times now they're asking how much is the A2Ls in the book? Because there's like a ton of, everybody's getting super swamped with A2L transition, A2L this, A2L that, and they're just pushing some, whatever it is, like tools or something, and they want to know, but how much the rules and the procedures of using it, like how much of that is in there. And so, like I've got R32 and R454B bottles. I'm like, I teach about it upside down, right side up, disposable bottles. Like we still don't have answers on the recovery bottles yet for A2L refrigerants. They just want to know, like, oh, a question for the book is, everybody thinks that we just wrote something up and added it into the existing book. And I'm like, no, literally spent an entire year remaking every single image and correcting the words. Because I took this instance to not correct things that were wrong, but make it better or more understandable. And as you grow and you have questions and you learn, you're able to write it better than you did last time. And you got to think like, 10 years ago, I didn't have anybody to review the book. In fact, I just published it on my own. I had to learn how to publish a book. Everybody thinks it's not that difficult, but I didn't have anybody to review it. So I just put it out as far as technically speaking. So I want to just improve it as best as possible. So it was a lot of work in there.
Yeah, it wasn't a remodel. It was a new build, new construction.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of work. Man, it's impressive, though, to get that done in a year.
Yeah, and it took a lot of people. So it's realistically, So we had my managing editor. She was working on it full time. Patricia, our operations director, she was working on it like maybe a quarter of the time while she was actually just handling everything else. Our other distribution person, she was working on it maybe 3/4 of the time. And I had the graphic designer full time on it. Our social media coordinator even put maybe about a quarter of his time into it. We had two offsite graphic designers working on it and myself. And so, yeah, it's a lot. And then I have to get in front of them with all of the work and all of the review and updates and things to keep them all going, feeding all of that. Then I have to stop and then make a YouTube video or whatever, make social media posts with a social media coordinator. He's pulled stuff out that is important that I've done in the past to make a new video out of, but then I have to record new ones. We also had some sponsorships and things like that that we're making posts for. And so you have to like pause there, do things in bulk, and then get back to what you're initially working on. So it takes a lot of planning and like reorganization, because a lot of things you don't even see coming even when you're planning. That is difficult, I would say.
As we wrap things up here, I just want to make sure the audience knows, if you get to see Craig in person, this is like a white rhinoceros. You're not, this is rare. So savor the moment if you get to see Craig in person. But I'd like to let you also share any closing thoughts.
I really enjoy when I get to talk to people out at the events. I think it's like almost, I don't want to call it like a healing moment, but it's like a reflection moment where a lot of people come up and you're able to say anything to them, just anything that's important to you, because they just want to spend time with you. And a lot of times, and Brian has reminded me of this a lot, where it's like, I'm all like, oh, I got to get this 100% perfect, the teaching thing, whatever I'm doing. He's like, people just want to hang out with you.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's true. Okay. So it's not like I put a lot of emphasis on the training part of the session or whatever. But anyway, what I would say to everybody is our trade is not your life. So you have to have balance, and you have to fight for balance in your life, especially when you have service calls at night, or you have even your own desires and ambitions pushing you. The most important thing that you have going on is your family. Well, if you worship God, obviously that's the highest thing. But your family is like, you have to take time for your family and to invest in them, because without them, you've got nothing. They're also your rock, and you just need to take care of them and nurture them before you go out and try to fulfill your ambitions and stuff. And also get stuck in work. You have to put your foot down a lot of times. And the way that you are able to put your foot down is but with knowledge and skill. And so the more knowledge and skillful you are, the more valuable you are. And an employer doesn't necessarily want to lose you. And so they're more willing to hear you when you're discussing the importance of your family life.
Wow. That's a good one. That may be the quote we extract for the short. Let's see what happens.
Okay.
I like the way you summed that up, Craig. Really want to thank you for coming on again, talking about the new book, talking about your process and your care and your consideration for the work you do. And hopefully people have gotten a chance to interact with you at Symposium or at AHR. I'm looking forward to seeing you there in person, as I'm sure Eric is too.
Absolutely. Can't wait to give Craig a big hug.
Yeah, no kisses this time, Eric.
No.
You weren't supposed to talk about that.
And my problem is I got to reach up to hug both of you.
Yeah. Eric just photobombs every photo that
yes,
I'm in.
He does.
Hey, man, I appreciate both you guys. And I would have never known that there was so many caring people that were like big influences on the industry until I came out to events and really got to know even both of you at different events. And so it's been really cool to see those people, because in the workforce, sometimes it's like rough. Some people maybe are rough on the job sites and rough here, rough there. And then you get to places like AHR, you get to places like the Symposium, and you just find, wow, those people really care about other people, and not only just for them to do the job right, but they just care about them as people. It's really cool. And so you guys are making that culture happen. So thank you.
Glad we connected.
Likewise. Thanks, Craig.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for making it this far and taking the time to listen to this whole episode with Craig. Lots of great nuggets in there. You can actually leave the podcast voicemail by going to our podcast page, buildinghvacscience.com, and clicking on the microphone in the lower right-hand corner. and we encourage comments and feedback no matter what platform you enjoy our content on. The Building HVAC Science podcast is a production of TruTech Tools Limited, and full disclosure, I'm the owner of TruTech. The opinions expressed are those of my guests, my co-host, and myself, depending on who's speaking, of course. If you're in the market for some tools or test instruments mentioned in the podcast, look at what TruTechTools.com carries. That's TruTechTools.com. You can use the offer code HVACBS for a nice discount. Thanks for listening and following us on Building HVAC Science. We hope we're making a difference in your life. You certainly make a difference in ours. Take care.